And as always, it's so good to see you, Hidden Nation. Welcome into the studio. It's Josh Cary here, your hidden entrepreneur. Hidden Nation, today we're joined by author Tim McCormick. He is the author of the book Liberal Democracy Battling for Survival, a Plan for Action. What I love about this is it's not just a book built right into the title. We have an action plan. So, what are we supposed to do about all of this? And that's what Tim is going to present for us today. Tim, good to have you on the program today.
Thank you.
I want to get started with the idea of democracy as an enigma, in which you call it. What do you mean by that?
Well, I understand an enigma to be a puzzle.
Sure.
And it is a puzzle to me because a few years ago, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, everyone thought it was game over. Autocracies are governments that are imposed on you, whereas democracies are governments chosen by the people. And all the advantages were with democracy. Even in terms of economic growth, civil liberties, and everything. So everyone said, game over, there'll be no more autocracies. And yet the number of autocracies has been increasing year on year, and there are now more autocracies than there are democracies. I want to solve that problem.
If I'm understanding everything correctly, what you're outlining here isn't an opinion. Is it more steeped in truth and fact that people can see and understand with their own eyes across the
Well,
world?
they can see that definitely the number of democracies are declining every year, and they can see the incredible power of autocracies. And it's the autocracies which are led very much by Russians, and they are winning the battle, and they're winning it basically by a matter of untruths, lies, if you like, misinformation, whatever. And they will help other autocracies. It doesn't matter what your ideology is, whatever the Russian ideology is these days anyway, but you can be any sort of government. And as long as you despise Western values, that's okay. And then they will help members of the club in a variety of very useful ways. The first is they can give cash, and that's quite commonly the place. And they can also give arms if someone is worried about being overthrown. Most important, they can advise on propaganda, at which they are experts in. And lastly, but not least, they can advise on surveillance. Now, this appeals to a lot of autocrats because they want to identify the opposition and deal with them. In face of this, the democracies are totally disunited and chaotic.
You trace in the book democracy's rise through the years. What shifts in values and behaviors have you seen that really made this happen?
Well, I think the fundamental and most important one is the position of honesty. Honesty has been a traditional value in most governments, in most countries for a long time. It's worth remembering that Nixon is no longer president because he is found out to have been lying to Congress. Lying is considered serious. The other virtues were, say, tolerance, accepting the other person's point of view, compassion, and I would say generosity. But what we've now got is dishonesty worldwide, but in particular in the USA. Along with that, I would say we have lost respect for the individual and the law. Moving on, in America in particular, they no longer accept the right to self-determination. America was founded on freedom and the belief that you should not impose your government on other people. And yet they are now nakedly imperialistic, whereas they used to be anti-colonial. and they're trying to take over Canada, Greenland. Um, if I could sum it up,
Yeah.
we're using a Christian analogy. There was the parable of the Good Samaritan, and this is accepted by other religions too. The Good Samaritan finds a traveler who's fallen amongst thieves, and he picks him up, heals his wounds, and looks after him. And that was the traditional value we espoused. Now you've got Trump as a bad Samaritan. He sees the fellow in trouble, gives him a good kick, and sees what he can take off him. And that's pretty worrying. And lastly, and going on from that, in America, the traditional definition of democracy was government by the people, for the people, and that was basically it. We've now got government by the rich, for the rich, and it's government of the people for other people's benefit.
Speaking of money, in one of your chapters, you make the correlation between democracy and the relationship with banks.
Yes.
How does the financial system influence the stability of democracy?
Well, it's kind of fundamental to them because all democracy needs some financial system.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a few years ago a major property crash. And a lot of people thought this was very unfair because the bankers who had created the crash got away with it. And the poor, unfortunate people who'd borrowed their money lost their homes. So people said that's not fair. And it must be the fault of democracy, which it wasn't, of course, necessarily. But it led them to lose confidence in the banks and the financial system.
You also compared democracy, as you've been saying, with autocracy. And you mention areas like equality, human needs, climate change, and peace. Why do you think democracy, in and of itself, always does better?
I think the reason is probably quite simple. Democracies are ruled by governments who want to get re-elected. And so if they ignore all these things, they won't get re-elected. Whereas autocrats, their only concern is staying in power. And they really don't give much of a thought to satisfying human needs such as survival, shelter, security, and personal freedom. That doesn't matter to them.
You also use the metaphor of ski runs. How does this play about?
Yeah. Those of you who have skied know that ski runs are classified with different colors to assess their steepness.
Yeah.
So the greater the steepness, the more extreme the autocracy. And I've graded them black, red, blue, green, and nursery. So the most extreme ones are the black runs, and the autocracies definitely in that bracket, Russia and China. And I would add most other African dictatorships. Red, they do have elections, but they have limited elections. Take the recent example of Venezuela. They had an election which everyone thought was good, but then the loser announced that he was the winner. So it's really a farce of democracy. And it's not surprising that the leader of the opposition was recently awarded the Nobel Prize. Another example will be Turkey. There they have free but definitely unfair elections. They're unfair because the opposition is harassed, they don't get media time, and they may be threatened with imprisonment. So those are not very strong democracies. Somewhere in the middle are the blue runs. And there they are, most people would think of democracies, but they're imperfect democracies. Take Hungary, for example. Hungary has always been pro-Russia and anti-EU. So being anti-EU, it doesn't really accept democracy in many ways. And that may change. Poland, they have free elections. Yes, and last time, yeah, there was a clear winner announced. But the trouble is they have appointed autocratic judges, and the judges are determined to stop changes demanded by democracy. The third case is India. India is fine if you're a Hindu, but not if you're a Muslim, and you are then deprived of your rights and equality. And the last one might surprise some people. I would say Israel is very much a flawed democracy. If you're a Jew, it's okay, but not if you're a Palestinian. Palestinians have very limited rights, as seen at its worst in the West Bank, where crimes can be committed against the local people by settlers, and their land can be grabbed, and yet there's no remedy by the government. So I would say that's a very flawed democracy. Going on then to the next category is green, and I would put most EU countries in this. You don't have a threat to democracy at the moment, but you have ever increasing right-wing parties, and they do not believe in democracy. They are undemocratic by their nature. And finally, you have the nursery slopes, which would include many underdeveloped countries. They're embryonic and hope to become democracies, but they may die in infancy.
What about the idea of democracies, as you say, can disappear by stealth? It sounds like they're here one day, they're not here another day. Are there some sort of warning signs that you can point to that somebody from the outside looking in, watching this, we could look for?
Yes, I'd say the first and most fundamental is freedom of the media and the press. Once that goes, an autocrat can impose his will, and it's nearly always him, at random. In the slightly longer term, they don't want anyone to contest it, so they will demand the judiciary is subservient to them. You won't have an independent judiciary. The government wants to appoint the judges who are clearly friendly to them. Going on from that, the executive, the government, is basically then answerable to nobody if they can muzzle the press and the judiciary. And in due course, they can eventually get rid of lots of very valued civil rights at their liberty. And all this may happen without being noticed until it's too late. And if it's too late, it's difficult to get it back sorted out.
In the book, I noticed you use social media as a recurring theme. Are we to see social media in and of itself? Is it a threat to democracy, or is it more of a positive tool?
That's a very good and very important question. We all know that social media are growing in influence these days, and it's based on the ability to spread messages quickly and cheaply. But the trouble is, the information may not be accurate. It may be misinformation and lies. And as I said earlier, the Russians are the expert at this, whereas the democracies tend to be naive. And all I can say is likely to get worse with the development of artificial intelligence, which will make it even more difficult to deal with.
What about the idea of populism that I know you analyze in the book? Why are so many of us drawn to it when it seemingly undermines the very basis of democracy?
Yeah, a populist is someone who believes they know the will of the people. And the present government is self-serving and really the hidden enemy. And the populist, he will normally deal with the hidden enemy. Populists are usually right-wing, and they're usually male, and they're usually surrounded by a circle of ambitious cronies who are looking to further their own careers. It always implies that the loser does not consent to being put out of power, and it's been a factor of life for very, very long time. You can go right back to Plato in Athenian democracy, and there you will see that he was worried that demagogues will get hold of the ship of state and steer it into trouble. And in fact, that's the picture on the front of my book. I show the ship of state being aimed at the rocks, which it may hit very shortly. The most famous of populists in modern times was probably Hitler, and in many ways he became the role model. The enemy were defined as the Jews, and he was very good at putting across propaganda. He was a skillful speaker long before the current media were developed, and he was able to persuade crowds of things that nowadays seem ridiculous. Nowadays, most populists are skilled in the use of social media, which makes it even more difficult for them to be curtailed.
At the top of the show, I mentioned that the title of the book is The Liberal Democracy Battling for Survival, a Plan for Action. And I said that this isn't just, an educational book, although it's important here. But let's talk about that plan for action, because I know you provide an overall plan for being able to protect democracy. If the listener can remember just one action point, what do they need to know?
Well, at the moment, the danger is that democracy is becoming an oligarchy, particularly in places like America, where it's the rich taking control of the system of government. And the major threat is around inequality. Inequality is getting worse and worse in the States the whole time. And it's a major problem in many other countries, even though it's not always recognized. Going on from that, the autocrats are better organized than Democrats at dealing with things, and they despise the traditional values. But it's not enough just to do hand-wringing and say, how terrible, how terrible. You've got to do something to change it. So you don't want to get into being purely short-termist. You have to take a longer view and develop infrastructure. But I would say one of the turning points will be regaining the respect of citizens. Unfortunately, a lot of citizens are now very cynical about governments and politicians, and that has to be, in some way, that ground has to be recovered. So the most effective way of doing that, we've got to move on social media. Social media is the way that people can be persuaded. If they can be persuaded at all, they're not going to read learned tomes or anything like that. And the West has to organize itself in order to get that message across. So I would say that to round up, the enigma has now been resolved. We understand why democracies are going down in numbers, but it's a time for a wake-up call and taking action before it's too late.
Absolutely brilliant. Tim McCormick, the book is Liberal Democracy Battling for Survival, a Plan for Action. Hidden Nation, it's available right now on Amazon in the format of your choice, hardcover, paperback, audio, which happens to be my favorite. Tim, congratulations. Thank you so much for joining in today. Really appreciate it.
Many thanks. I'm very grateful. Thank you for your time.